Do you ever wonder what's hidden in the things people leave behind? The old boxes in attics, the forgotten rooms, the dusty shelves of things no one remembers owning. Sometimes the past stays where it belongs, but sometimes it doesn't. Tonight's story isn't about ghosts or monsters or urban legends. It's about a tape. An ordinary black-labeled VHS that never plays the same thing twice. And the man who learned what happens when you keep pressing play. If you think you can handle it, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen. This is The Black Tape. A story of obsession reflection and the eye that never stops watching. I never thought of myself as the kind of person who'd end up terrified by something as harmless as a VHS tape. I just liked old media. It reminded me of simpler times, the clack of the plastic case, the hum of the player warming up, that soft electric buzz only cathode ray tubes ever made. It felt safe, nostalgic, real. My collection started as a way to remember childhood shows, but it became an obsession. I'd buy random boxes of tapes from estate sales or auctions. Sometimes they were labeled, sometimes blank, sometimes scrawled with handwriting long since faded to ghosts. Most of the time they were harmless old sitcoms, news broadcasts, family videos. Nothing special, but there's a comfort in that kind of nothingness. It's like peering into someone else's memories. Then one day I found the tape. It was buried in a cardboard box among a dozen blanks. Every other label was plain white, unmarked, except one. Someone had taken a thick black marker and smeared over the sticker so violently the paper tore. The spot looked burned, like it had to be hidden. Of course I picked that one first. Who wouldn't that night? I made sure it was fully rewound. I turned off the lights, pressed play, and leaned back in my chair, expecting old commercials, or maybe a forgotten soap opera. For a while, that's exactly what it looked like. A man sitting at his desk, working through papers. The static flickered, the colors were washed, but it all seemed mundane. He never looked up, just scribbled, sighed, shuffled pages. I almost stopped watching. Then I noticed the mirror behind him. It was angled slightly enough to catch the back wall and part of his reflection. At first, I thought it was a clever composition, maybe an artsy student film. But the longer I watched, the more wrong it felt. The reflection wasn't keeping up. A delay maybe half a second, but definite. When he moved his hand, the reflection moved after him. When he leaned back to stretch, the reflection didn't. It just sat there, staring. My pulse quickened, though I told myself it was a glitch in the tape. Maybe a recording error. But when the man turned his head, his mirrored self was already facing the camera. The screen cut to black. The player clicked. The tape had reached its end. I rewound it immediately, eager to catch the moment I might have missed. But when I hit play again, the man was gone. Now it was a woman standing in a grocery aisle, comparing cereal boxes. Everything about her seemed perfectly ordinary, until a box further down the row shifted on its own, slowly, deliberately. It crept forward inch by inch until gravity took it tumbling to the floor with a flat thud. The woman turned, startled. She stared at the fallen box for a few seconds, then shrugged, picked one at random, and walked away. End scene. Black again, then the whir of rewinding. That was when I realized the tape had changed. The first recording was gone, replaced by something else. That shouldn't be possible. I played it again. Another new scene. And again. And again. Each time something different appeared, people I didn't know, places I'd never seen. None of them lasted longer than 20 minutes, but everyone felt off in the same subtle way, like the air inside the images was slightly heavier, the colors slightly wrong. I should have stopped there, but I didn't, because the truth is, it fascinated me. The idea that an old VHS could make new footage each time, like a living thing or a dream that recorded itself, that was intoxicating. That was the night I started losing sleep. I didn't sleep that night. I told myself I just wanted to understand what I'd found. That's what collectors do, right? We study, preserve, decode. But deep down, I knew I was chasing something else. The tape didn't just contain footage. It responded. When I played it the next morning, it wasn't the grocery store or the man at his desk. It was something else entirely. The camera was shaky handheld. I could see trees' sunlight leaking through the branches and the faint sound of a breeze. Whoever was filming was walking through a park. Eventually, the view settled on a man sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons. Only they weren't pigeons. They were children, small, filthy, ragged, crawling on hands and knees, picking pieces of bread off the concrete. And the man didn't react. He just kept tossing crumbs. When the scene cut to black, I sat there, my heart thudding in the silence. I checked the timer, 19 minutes, just like before. I rewound it, hoping it would replay, but when I pressed play again, the footage had changed once more. This time, the camera was mounted inside a car. I saw a man gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, breathing hard. The car wasn't moving, but he was turning the wheel furiously, like he thought he was driving. The window beside him showed nothing but dirt. He was buried up to his doors, trapped in some kind of ditch. The engine screamed, unmoving. Then, as if he sensed me watching, he looked straight into the lens. Black screen. Rewind. I wanted to believe these were pre-recorded scenes, maybe part of an art project or some kind of experimental film. That's what I told myself. But then came the next viewing. A bedroom. Someone lay in bed, still as stone. Their skin was black, charred, cracked, like overcooked meat. Steam rose from their body. I stared, half repulsed, half hypnotized, until their fingers twitched. Then they twitched again. And then the whole body spasmed violently. The burned skin began to shift, like it was being pulled tight from underneath. I leaned forward. The red cracks began to glow, spreading as the skin peeled back, and beneath it was new flesh, raw and alive, writhing as if clawing its way back from something unspeakable. When the twitching stopped, the person was whole again. A woman now, middle-aged, breathing calmly as if nothing had happened. That's when the tape stopped. My finger hovered over rewind, but I hesitated. When I finally pressed it, the screen went black halfway through the rewind. It stayed that way until the tape clicked and stopped. No image, no sound, like it was warning me not to interfere. That night, I joined a few online VHS forums. I wrote a vague post about a tape that seemed to change each time it was played. No one took me seriously. Some laughed. Others accused me of trolling for views. But I wasn't doing this for attention. I didn't even have a channel back then. I just wanted answers. After a while, I stopped asking. I decided to keep it to myself, my little mystery, my private collection. And honestly, it saved me money. Why buy new tapes when one could give me something different every time? Every new play was a lottery. And every time I told myself, just one more. I started calling it my golden tape. It felt alive. It was alive. I just didn't understand how deep that truth went yet. Days passed, and I kept watching. At first, it was just curiosity. Then it became ritual. I'd make coffee, close the blinds, sit in my old armchair, and press play, waiting to see what the tape had prepared for me this time. The strange part was that it never felt random. Each new scene somehow remembered what came before, as if the tape was telling a story only I could follow. One morning, the screen flickered to life with a static hiss. A shaky, over-the-shoulder shot of an old man in a bathroom appeared. He was standing in front of a mirror, staring into it, as if waiting for something to happen. His eyes were hollow-tired. He raised his right hand, slowly, hesitantly, and waved at his reflection. The reflection copied him perfectly mirrored. He waited, frowned, and tried again. Same result. Then he tried something else, a quick motion, like testing it. The reflection hesitated, just a heartbeat of delay. He froze, lowering his arm. His breathing picked up. He tried again this time, faster, a series of frantic gestures, each one answered by a slightly slower, slightly off reflection. The camera zoomed closer, unsteady. The old man slammed his hand against the mirror, shouting something I couldn't hear. The reflection didn't follow. It just stared back. Then the footage ended. Black. Rewind. I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't just that the scenes were getting darker. It was that they were starting to feel personal. Mirrors, reflections, eyes. All the same motifs repeating like a whisper just behind my ear. I played it again that evening. New footage. A slow pan across a child's bedroom. Soft toys lined neatly on a shelf. Colorful wallpaper daylight bleeding through curtains. A peaceful scene, almost comforting, until the camera began to move closer. As it zoomed in on a doll in the center shelf, I noticed tiny movements around the edges of the frame. A plush bear tilted slightly. A toy soldier shifted its leg. Another doll blinked a small dry snap of plastic eyelids. At first, I thought it was a trick of the VHS artifacts. But when the camera focused on that central doll, a porcelain one with glass eyes, I saw it. The eye moved. Not the whole head, just the eye turning slowly toward the camera until it was staring right at me. The footage cut to black again. By now I was shaking. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Bad lighting, clever editing, whatever, would let me sleep that night. But when I turned off the TV, the faint glow of the screen stayed for a few seconds longer than usual. Just long enough for me to see my own reflection looking back. And for the briefest moment, I could swear. It smiled. I didn't sleep that night either. That was the first time I felt something watching me. And it hasn't stopped since. The next morning, I told myself I'd stop. I even boxed the tape up, set it on a shelf, and tried to forget about it. But it called to me. Not literally, not with words, just a pull, quiet and patient, the kind of whisper that lives at the back of your thoughts. By nightfall, I gave in. I told myself it was for closure, that I just needed to see one more scene to satisfy my curiosity. That was the first lie I told myself that day. When I pressed play, the screen was dark for a long time. A low hum rolled through the speakers, like wind through a tunnel. Then a faint light flickered on dim, unsteady buzzing, like an old fluorescent bulb. It revealed white tiles, cracked and grimy. A bathroom. The camera was low near the floor, gliding forward slowly. Somewhere off-screen, I heard the sound of sloshing water. Wet, deliberate movements. As the camera approached the bathtub, I realized how full it was, the water so high it rippled over the rim. Except it wasn't water. It was red, thick, dark, and slow. Someone was moving just beneath the surface. A pale arm broke through, then disappeared again. Another, then a leg. All wrong, all disconnected, writhing like they were trying to swim but couldn't. The tub began to shake. The red liquid splashed over the edge, spreading across the floor towards the camera. For a second, I thought it might spill through the screen and reach me. Then it stopped. Everything went still. A single human eye rose to the surface. It floated there, glossy and lifeless, staring straight up at the ceiling. The tape cut to black. I froze. No breathing, no sound, just the faint hum of the VHS player. I told myself, this one was different. Darker, yes, but still explainable. Maybe a short film, maybe a staged prop. But deep down, something in me knew that wasn't true. I could feel my heart in my throat, pounding so loud, it filled the silence. I ejected the tape and stared at it. The label, that blackened patch, looked darker than before, as if the ink had sunk deeper into the paper. I swear it hadn't looked like that when I put it in. That night, I dreamed of water crimson, heavy, lapping at my ankles. Something cold brushed against my leg, and when I looked down, I saw hands pulling themselves out of the bath, reaching for me. I woke up gasping, the sound of sloshing still echoing in my head. When I walked past the TV, I froze. There was a wet streak running down the inside of the glass from top to bottom, like condensation, or something trying to get out. I didn't sleep again. Not that night, not the next. The tape was changing me, and I was starting to understand that I'd never be the same again. I stopped pretending it was a hobby. It had turned into something else, a ritual, a compulsion, the kind you hate yourself for, but can't stop doing. I called in sick to work that morning. I didn't even try to come up with an excuse. All I could think about was the tape. When I pressed play, the static hummed for a long time before the picture settled. This time, it was a sterile room. White walls, a metal chair, and a mirror that stretched from one end to the other. I knew immediately it wasn't a normal mirror. It had that faint darkness, the kind you only see in two-way glass. A little girl sat in the chair. She couldn't have been more than 8. She wore a hospital gown and clutched a ragged doll to her chest. Somewhere off screen, a man's voice came through a speaker. "Can you talk to one of the dolls for us?" he asked. The girl nodded shyly and turned to the toy. "Hi," she said softly. "My name's Ellie." A second passed. Then another voice, low, smooth, and absolutely wrong, answered. "Not that one." I flinched. The man behind the glass must not have heard it. He asked again, "Which one is speaking, honey?" The girl tilted her head. "That one," she said, pointing to a doll in the center of the table. The camera zoomed in on it, cracked porcelain. One glass eye missing the other, reflecting a harsh glint of light. "Ask it who it is," said the man. The girl hesitated. "Who are you?" The doll's head jerked slightly, almost like it had been yanked by a string. Then, in that same smooth voice, it said, "I am a vessel." The air in my room seemed to thicken. I leaned closer, straining to hear, even though I didn't want to. "What do you mean?" the man asked. But before the girl could repeat his question, the doll turned its head toward the mirror. Its single eye twitched violently, rolling in its socket. Then it stopped, facing the glass perfectly. "I see you," it said. The man's voice cracked through the speaker. "What's happening? What's he seeing?" But the girl didn't respond. The doll's voice grew louder. "I see all of you." And then the feed distorted. Static burst through the screen, warping the image, twisting it like wet film. For a fraction of a second, I saw something in the reflection of the mirror. Not the girl, not the doll, but a huge, unblinking eye watching from the other side. Then the tape cut to black. I sat frozen, unable to move. The hum from the player filled the room low and steady, like breathing. When the tape finally rewound, I left it running. I couldn't bring myself to touch it, but the entire time I felt it that same sensation. As before, the pressure in the back of my skull, the prickling heat behind my own eyes. I went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. When I looked up, my reflection didn't look away. It blinked a second too late. I smashed the mirror that night. I told myself it was for peace of mind, but it didn't help. Every reflective surface, the TV screen, the window, even the black coffee in my cup felt like a portal. Because whatever was inside that tape, it had found me. And it wasn't just watching anymore. I wish I could say I stopped there. That I had the sense to throw the tape away, smash the player, and walk out of that room for good. But I didn't. Something had already taken root in me. Curiosity, fear, obsession. It didn't matter what you called it. It was all the same thing. The tape wanted to be seen, and I wanted to see it. The next morning, I sat in front of the TV again, the same spot as always. The air in the room felt heavy stale, like the walls were holding their breath. I told myself I'd only watch once, just once. The final lie I'd tell myself. When I pressed play, the image that appeared made my skin crawl. The shot was of a small room square, featureless like a box. The camera didn't move. In the center stood a man. He looked confused at first, pacing slowly, testing the walls with his hands. Then they began to close in. It was subtle at first, the sound of wood creaking, plaster cracking, but soon the walls were shifting, inching closer every second. The man started screaming, pounding his fists, leaving streaks of blood on the pale surface. I wanted to stop the tape, but I couldn't. It felt like my body didn't belong to me anymore. He scratched something onto the wall with his nails, a crooked circle, intersected by a crude, uneven H. The same symbol I'd seen before, the one that burned into my memory from the doll's glass eye. It pulsed faintly, glowing through the grime. Then the camera zoomed in on the man's face. His eyes were wide, shaking, darting back and forth, and then they both rolled upward until all I could see was white. The screen went black. I sat in the silence for a long time. My heart was pounding, but my body felt cold hollow, like the air had been sucked out of me. That was when I realized how quiet my house was. No refrigerator hum, no outside noise, just silence. And then a small click. The VHS player turned itself back on. I froze. The tape began to play again on its own. This time, the camera was moving, walking through a house. My house. The walls, the furniture, even the coffee cup I'd left on the table. I could hear faint breathing behind the camera, but it wasn't mine. It stopped at the door to my collector's room. The camera lingered on the knob, trembling slightly before pushing it open. I watched as it panned across the shelves of tapes, my shelves the exact order I'd left them in. It moved past the couch, the rug, the old CRT television, until finally the frame stopped. On me. I was there, sitting in the chair, watching. My hands were shaking, but the version of me on screen wasn't. He just stared motionless, eyes wide and classy, as if he'd been sitting there for hours. And then he smiled. The image flickered. The static thickened until the picture broke apart entirely. The next thing I remember was standing halfway across the room, sweating, gasping, every instinct screaming at me to run. I yanked the plug from the wall, ripping out the power. The screen went dark, but in the faint reflection, I saw movement. Something was still behind the glass. That night, I boxed up every mirror, every polished surface, every shiny object I could find. I shoved them into the attic and shut the door. Still, I could feel it. That crawling awareness, like something standing too close in the dark, breathing in sync with me. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, watching, waiting. I don't know how long I stayed away from that room. Hours, maybe days. Time had stopped meaning anything. The tape was still there, sitting in the player like a loaded gun. Every time I walked by the door, I could feel it, a pulse, faint but alive, like the hum of an engine idling in the dark. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the quiet made it worse. The silence pressed down on me until it was unbearable. So I went back. The air in the collector's room was stale, thick with dust, and the faint metallic tang of something old and electric. The CRT screen reflected a dull glow from the window, even though the power was still unplugged. I should have known better. But I sat down anyway. The tape was still inside. I didn't even have to press play. It started on its own. The image blinked into existence, grainy and unfocused. At first a dark, endless blackness that slowly brightened until I realized it wasn't darkness at all. It was an eye, enormous, consuming, staring straight through the screen. It didn't blink. It didn't move. Just watched. I told myself to look away, but my body wouldn't listen. My breathing matched its stillness, shallow, uneven. For a long time, nothing happened. Just that endless, suffocating gaze. Then slowly, the pupil began to dilate, and I saw something moving inside it. At first, it was just a shimmer, a trick of the light. Then I realized it was me, my reflection tiny and distorted, standing in my own living room, framed inside the black of its pupil. I took a step back. The eye shifted upward, following. Another step. It tilted again. It was tracking me. My chest tightened. The air crackled with static. I lunged forward, slamming the power button, but the screen didn't change. The image stayed. The eye widened. For a second, I thought I saw the faintest hint of a smile forming beneath it. A curve subtle, but human. And then the picture changed. Now it was my room, exactly as it was, from the same angle as my TV. Except I was in the frame, sitting frozen, one hand still reaching for the remote. The me on screen didn't move, didn't breathe, but his reflection in the glass cabinet behind him did. It turned its head slowly, painfully, until it was facing the camera, facing me. I fell backward, my knees hitting the floor. I couldn't scream. All I could do was watch as my reflected self raised its hand and pressed it flat against the inside of the glass. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the glass began to fog, right where his palm touched. I snapped. I kicked the TV. The old CRT cracked and fell backward, shattering against the wall. I ripped the player out by its cords and threw it out the front door. It landed hard on the concrete outside. For a long time, I stood there in silence, staring at the space where the TV had been. The house felt wrong, empty, but not alone. I locked the collector's room and never opened it again. The next morning, the VCR was gone. Someone or something had taken it. I tried to move on, sold the rest of my tapes, got rid of every reflective surface in the house, even sprayed my windows with matte coating so I wouldn't have to see myself again. But sometimes, when I walk past the empty space where that old CRT used to sit, I catch something, a faint shimmer on the wall, like light bending through glass. And when I stop to look closer, I swear there's an eye there. Just one. Watching. Always watching. I don't know if it's the same one from the tape or if I've just carried it with me somehow. But if you ever find a box of old VHS tapes and one of them has a label blacked out with marker, don't put it in. Don't even touch it. Because once it looks at you, it never stops. You're still here. Good. Because stories like this don't just fade when the screen goes dark. Sometimes they linger, waiting for someone else curious enough to look. If you ever find a stack of old VHS tapes at a flea market or a garage sale, and one of them has a label blacked out with marker, walk away. Don't touch it. Don't test it. Don't press play. Because once it sees you, once you look back, it never forgets. This was NightLore. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more tales that should never be told. And remember, some stories are better left unplayed.